This podcast is sponsored by FortuneFavours.ie. FortuneFavours.ie is a home workout equipment store and your one-stop shop for all home gym equipment. They are well known for their adjustable dumbbells, which combine 15 different weights in one dumbbell. They have both 24 kg and 40 kg adjustable dumbbells. Check the link in the bio of this episode for more information. So welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with Garry Doran from the Hurling Podcast, the Wexford Hurling Podcast, just to discuss this weekend's All-Ireland Hurling Final between Limerick and Kilkenny. Some cracking matchups, a cracking game to look forward to live at RT2, of course, and Sky Sports Arena from 3:30 in Croke Park. And first of all, how are you keeping, Garry? Wexford or Cork haven't reached the All-Ireland Final, but still, next Sunday should be an absolute cracker.
Yeah. I think every aspect of this game coming up is interesting, from 1 to 15 to the people coming, the subs that'll be coming in, to the management teams, just everything about it. Unfortunately, it's not a Wexford there or a Cork from your point of view, but from a Wexford point of view, I'm happy that there was progress made this year under Darragh Egan, and excited about the next year.
Absolutely, yeah, and it should be a very exciting final. But before, I was thinking this morning, we'll talk about all the final, all the matchups and stuff like that going into this podcast episode. But some news broke this morning of Tipperary essentially sacking their manager Colm Bonner after 1 year in charge. It was supposed to be a 3-year term, but he sacked. Paul Curran and Tommy Dunn left yesterday, as we mentioned off air as well. What was your whole thoughts around the situation? It was very weird the way Tipperary put it out. You'd usually hear it in soccer that a manager would be essentially sacked, but in GA, it's usually a manager steps down at the end of their tenure, not a manager being relieved of his duties. So what do you think of all the kerfuffle with Tipperary?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I don't know what's going on in the background there. What we do know is what we've seen throughout the year, and there's not one manager out of any of the senior county hurling managers that had a tougher job than Colm Bonner this year, with the amount of big players that left the panel in the last year or were injured. They didn't have a successful championship in terms of losing all their games, but they didn't lie down in any of the games. Even they were on top of Limerick, who are now in an All-Ireland final and favourites for that, with 8 minutes to go. I think they were still leading. He had a very tough year. I was disappointed with the way it came out, relieved, as you just said, relieved of his duties. You don't see that very often. It's a strange one. Usually, he stepped away or something like that. It may be a mutual consent, because maybe he wouldn't step away and they had to do it like that. I don't know, but I think he's been harshly treated. We talked to him in 2020 after he was over Carlow and after Wexford played Carlow in the league, and he's just an absolute gentleman, and his knowledge on hurling is phenomenal. He's done a great job in most places he's been, and there's only so much you can do in 1 year, especially given the circumstances. So I think I'm sure he's disappointed not getting a second year at it.
Yeah, it is very disappointing. I was reading on the Irish Examiner actually before we came on air there, and he's very disappointed how it turned out at the end. Even at the start of his reign, he even explained to the county board this was a transitional period of Tipperary hurling. It was going to take a few years. Liam Sheedy, for example, only played, I think I mentioned at GA Fan TV last year, he only played one younger player, Jake Morris. A lot of young players being brought in, and that makes the getting rid of Colm Bonner even more kind of, disrespectful in a way, because, they were bringing new players. They were trying to get the old guard out, and this was a young Tipperary team. And looking at the quality of Munster teams, including Limerick, Clare were improving. Cork got reached on Ireland final last year. Waterford in the league were outstanding. So it was always going to be tough for Tipperary, which makes the whole situation even more laughable.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd imagine he obviously wasn't the first choice, I think, last year. I assume Liam Cahill was, and they put their eggs in his basket and then got turned down. Maybe Liam knew something more than what the rest of us knew about maybe players going to be stepping away, but obviously he didn't know about the injuries. Maybe Liam just wanted another crack with Waterford. But like it made sense, Liam Cahill, to go into that Tipperary setup when they're bringing in all the younger lads that Liam managed at under 21 level. But they gave it to Colm Bonner, and I mean, I know in hurling you're given a 3-year term, but it's assessed after every year. The only assessment that can be made after this year is he's brought in a bunch of new players, young lads, give him a chance to breed them in. Like Darragh Egan had a little bit of he didn't have a similar problem in that lots of players stepped away. But when Davy Fitz was over, he was over for 5 years. And when he started, he brought in a couple of players. And then he set with those. Like for the last 3 years under Davy, very few new players came in. And Darragh Egan has come in this year, and he has to start bringing in young players. But he has the luxury that Colm Bonner doesn't have of he's not forced to throw him straight in there, which Colm Bonner has to do. And I think what Darragh is doing at Wexford, very happy with it. He's brought in a lot of new names that have got a nice bit of time in the league and in the championship. And as I said, I'm looking forward to next year for that. Colm wasn't given that, and yeah, I've already messaged Darragh Egan to make sure he says no if he's approached.
That's a very weird one, because I was chatting to some of my family about this Tipperary job, and he was suggesting, who'll get selected though? Forward Darren or Dar or something. I was like, Darren Gleeson off Antrim? No, Darragh Egan. I was like, 1 year at Wexford, seriously, would he quit after 1 year? But you're saying he's staying put. He's definitely staying put now.
Well, he didn't answer me. He said I told him to say no if you're asked, and he just sent back a smiley face. I'm going to take it that he'll be sticking with Wexford. I'd say Antrim are doing the same with Darren Gleeson, and yeah, it'd be interesting to see who's going to be in line for it. I'd say Willie Maher's name will come up. Maybe Liam Cahill. Maybe they'll have another crack at getting him back. Liam Sheedy, I think, has already turned it down on Anthony Daly's podcast, but you never know.
Exactly, yeah. I was seeing who was it? Nicky English is another suggestion. I think James Woodlock, the minor manager, is another one. Brendan Cummins, I think, is the favourite. So if one of them come in, like Brendan Cummins, what do you think of him? Like, he did well with the under 20s, lost narrowly to Limerick. Limerick reached all the final, obviously, and he brought it through a bunch of young players. So he'd probably be an ideal man to take these young players to the next level as well.
Yeah, and all these names, that they all have huge interest. I mean, Brendan Cummins, listening to him speak, he knows the game in and out. He knows Tipperary in and out. He knows the players. He's worked with the underage team. So yeah, he's obviously a strong candidate as well.
Definitely, yeah, and we'll definitely talk about this in the next few weeks. Like, it should be very interesting to see what happens. A lot of people think Cork is the most prized asset job, but Tipperary arguably is bigger. Like, I think it's nearly 30 All-Irelands now for Tipperary. Like, that's an unreal achievement for them. The turbo successful county in hurling. This is a big decision for Tipperary, and we will talk about that in the next few weeks. But it is the All-Ireland hurling final on Sunday between Kilkenny and Limerick, and Wexford have played the both League and Championship this season. Obviously, Wexford won both games, which is a bit unusual.
Yeah. Why aren't we up there?
That's the question that on everybody's lips, so you would say. Like, Wexford, they beat Limerick by 3 points. They beat Kilkenny by 4 points. Obviously, Kilkenny was probably a better result for Wexford, beaten by 4 points. But honestly, I wanted to ask you this before you even came on. Like, when Wexford beat Kilkenny by 4 points, did you see Brian Cody's team reaching an All-Ireland final after that result?
Yeah, I did. I had it in my head that Wexford were going to beat Kilkenny in an All-Ireland final, but then the way it would have worked out, Wexford were going to get them in the semi-final. But yeah, I think the way I feel about it is that, now, forgive me, but Munster hurling snobbery, that kind of Kilkenny get written off because they get beaten by Wexford. Galway get written off because they get beaten by Kilkenny. I like hurling. There's so many teams now just on a similar level, and honestly, Limerick are a little bit above them all. After that, there's not much between a lot of the rest of the counties, and even Westmeath showed this year against Wexford that given any given Sunday and a series of events that happen in a particular game, they can grab a result. They could have won that game. Kilkenny are just the team that won't go away. I grew up hating Kilkenny as a Wexford man, but I don't know how I've come to love them as well. And I'll always think that they have a chance. And if ever I see that they're not a favourite for a game, unless they're playing against Wexford, I'll think they can still win it, and I'll probably think about backing them.
And you mentioned about Munster hurling snobbery. I was probably guilty of that in the past few weeks, saying Munster hurling is way ahead of Leinster hurling. But what the last few weeks have proven, like Cork be beaten by Galway, Wexford really put it up to Clare, and then Kilkenny hammering Clare out the gate in the semi-final. Let's not forget Limerick nearly losing to Galway as well. Like Galway really put it up to them. So, like Leinster hurling's really been brushed under the carpet, especially this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it has. I felt that way. But then I'm from Leinster, so I'm obviously going to, and from Wexford, and I kind of feel that Wexford might be a little bit disrespected. But it's just the way I heard. Like, look at Waterford in the league. The league semi-final against Wexford hammered us, and the league final against Cork hammered them. And they are now the second best team. They are the challengers to Limerick. They played in the first round of the championship. I think Limerick beat them maybe by 5 points. It was seen as the first of the 3 cracking games that they're going to have all year. And it just turned out that Waterford, maybe they peaked too soon. I'm not sure about this peaking. Did they peak in the league, or when is the right time to peak? Did Clare peak for the Munster final and start tipping off? I don't know if it's about that. It's any given Sunday. It's the way you hit a game. It's how you react to the start of a game. Limerick, what has them ahead of everyone else is that they don't lose their composure. When things go against them, they just stay going. They stick to the plan. I heard a couple of the Kilkenny guys talking about Kilkenny this year, like their first, the match against Galway and Salthill. It wasn't their first game, but they were only beaten by a point. But people kind of thought that was Kilkenny gone, kind of, and Galway are now the favourites. But it was in Salthill. It was 1 point in it, and if you remember, the very last score that Galway got was a very contentious free where Paddy Deegan looked like he could have won the ball. And then straight away, Galway are favourites for Leinster. Remember where I was going with this. But then Kilkenny came back and they bet Galway in the Leinster final, and maybe comfortably. Leinster were tighter in all the games. Munster had more bigger beatings. I know the Laois got a few hammerings in Westmeath as well, but Wexford drew with Galway the first day, beaten by a point by Dublin, bet Kilkenny by 4. 1 point between Kilkenny and Galway. Dublin did lose out a bit more too. I think they might be a little bit behind. I mean, they still can pull out results like beating Wexford, but they're a bit behind Wexford, Galway and Kilkenny.
Yeah, definitely. So very interesting championship, definitely, especially Leinster. And we'll talk about the first team in the All-Ireland final, definitely. And it is a Leinster county and Kilkenny. Like, personally, like, in the semi-final stage, a lot of people wrote Kilkenny off against Clare, thinking, oh, Clare, again, Munster snobbery at the same time, like Clare performing well in the Munster final, getting Limerick extra time, and then a poor performance against Wexford, and Clare fans especially were thinking, look, we've got our bad performance out of the way, we'll go into this Kilkenny game with our tails up and we'll go in and try and put in a performance in Croke Park. But Kilkenny just didn't allow that. Like, they beat Clare by 12 points, really wiping the floor with them. The game was over at half time. It was like a training session. And Kilkenny's players like TJ Reid, Adrian Mullen, Owen Cody have really stepped up, especially since the Galway game in Salthill. Like, Kilkenny, to me, it looks like Kilkenny have improved game on game. And that's equivalent to a Cody team in the past. They improve as the year goes on.
Yeah, and probably the format doesn't suit Kilkenny as well, because they're so used to maybe 2 or 3 games in Leinster, winning Leinster, big break until an All-Ireland semi-final, then a 3-week break until an All-Ireland final. I don't think the 2-week break between semi-final and final suits them either. I think the 4-week break between the Leinster final and the semi-final, excellent for them. That's exactly what Brian Cody wants. He wants them back in Nolan Park doing 15-on-15 games, earning their place for that team that they're not going to let go. I don't think they can do that between the semi-final and the final, because the first week is recovery and the second week it's just sharpening up. I don't think that middle weekend he could risk doing a 50. Now maybe he did, it's Brian Cody. Like maybe that's exactly what he did. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I don't, for that reason, I don't think Brian Cody will do what he has done before and spring a surprise into a starting 15 that nobody saw coming, because usually that position is earned in those 15-on-15 games. But Kilkenny, I'm remembering the point I started on earlier. They were accused against Galway and Salt Hill of playing too short. I think they gave away 1-4 from trying to play it out from the back, and you could actually see Brian Cody's frustration on the sideline at the short ball, and you could hear what he was thinking, as in, why are we doing this short ball? Why is everyone telling me that this is the way to go? We've just given away 1-4 because of it. Like Owen Murphy, who I'd rate as one of the best, the best goalkeeper at the moment, he had an awful day with both just uncharacteristic, not like him. I think it's the only time I've ever seen him have an off day. But things didn't work out for Kilkenny with the short game that day. And then they kind of reverted. They got under a bit of pressure and they reverted to type of just hitting it long. Against Wexford, similarly, there was a mountain of ball that Wexford hit down on top of Kilkenny, and they just drove it back down to Wexford with the spare, with Dee O'Keefe having an absolute stormer of a game, just cleaning up everything. I think Richie Reid was very culpable for driving a lot of ball away in that game. And it was, again, they were under a bit of pressure, and that's when the pressure came on, they kind of started just getting rid of the ball, driving it down long. I was actually thinking that after the Wexford game, I think we were speaking to Eddie Brennan after it, and I just was thinking, why would Padraig Walsh not take up that centre-back role? And look, I've been proven wrong now, because Richie Reid in the last two games has been absolutely excellent, and the use of the ball has been brilliant as well. But the thing is, were Kilkenny lumping it down long because that's what they were told to do, or was it the fact that they didn't have the options to play it short because Wexford were covering them, or because the pressure that the Wexford were putting under the Kilkenny players? And I'd say the same about Clare. Like, did they play bad for the start of that game? Yeah, they missed the chances that they hit wide were bad, especially some of the frees that Tony Kelly missed. But it's playing bad and it's not being allowed to play, not being allowed to do what you want to do. Like, and that's what Kilkenny did to Clare, and that's what Kilkenny will do to Limerick. But it's how Limerick react, and usually Limerick react very well.
Yeah, that's an interesting point there. And what I noticed as well about the games that I did stats on in the Kilkenny and Limerick games, in every one of Limerick's games, their opposition had at least 10 wides. And I revisit a comment made by Joe McCarthy, a journalist down here in Cork. He made on some GA podcast, the GA Show podcast I was on recently, that's the crime against Limerick. You can't have 10 plus wides against a team like Limerick. They will punish you. Look at Kilkenny's stats. I did their stats against two of the games against Galway this year, the game against Wexford and the game against Clare. 3 of those games against Clare and the 2 against Galway, they had less than 10 wides. They had 12 wides against Wexford. So as a Wexford man yourself, did Wexford really have to put pressure on Kilkenny to get them wides, or were their errors just Kilkenny's own wrongdoing?
No, I'd like to think that Wexford put them under pressure. I mean, looking at the wides as well is, I know I'm changing enough what you asked me, but the amount of wides that Clare hit against Wexford and against Kilkenny, I think that was partly because they weren't the shot selection was poor, especially against Kilkenny. But in both games, it was that they're also under pressure from, maybe they're not used to the Leinster style of hurling of being marked a little bit tighter. But I didn't realize that Kilkenny had only, what was it, did you say, less than 10 wides against Galway in the both games, yeah, and against Clare. Yeah, like that's efficiency, and it's good shot selection. And yeah, I would like to think that the reason they had 12 against Wexford was because of the pressure that Wexford were putting onto them.
And I suppose, like, again, for Limerick now, I think Waterford at 10 wides, Cork at 11. Galway, the last day in the semi-final, had 19 wides. So
Galway that's had a lot of poor wides.
Exactly, yeah. So that is a big crime that you do against Limerick. And when you look at Kilkenny's scores this season, TJ Reid has scored 211 per play. Adrian Mullen's been outstanding with 25 points. Cody with 213. Like, you'd expect them fellas to step up now in an Ireland final and perform. And what's crucial for Kilkenny is they keep that shooting efficiency up, what they did against Clare and the 2 games against Galway this season.
Yeah. TJ, I wouldn't have any worries about. TJ is mind-blowing. His performance against Clare, like the way he's able to catch the ball, the way he's able to compose himself in the air while like having a lad trying to tackle him and he just grabs the ball out of the sky. I mean, I'm in awe of him every time I watch him. But I'm most interested about Adrian Mullen because, like, I don't know where he's going to line out. Maybe wing forward, possibly. But he's not, wherever he lines out, where he's going to play is out around the middle. I would think similarly to the way Tony Kelly plays against Limerick. And Tony Kelly's not marked when he's playing against Limerick. And he comes off with as the top scorer in those games. I'd be interested in, will the same happen with Adrian Mullen? Will he not be marked? And if he's not, like, his shooting efficiency has been excellent this year. And it could be the same problem for Limerick, that if they allow him a little bit of space out around the middle, that he'll just start picking off points. But he has to get them. Against Limerick, you have to take your chances. Galway were given the opportunity and they missed their chances. They had a lot of very poor wides from frees, from play, just uncharacteristic. Maybe it was pressure. It's hard to know. But yeah, I'm interested in to see how Adrian Mullen does. I think he could get a nice few scores in this game.
And the thing is, if Limerick decide to mark Adrian Mullen this, as regards to the programmes the last time, the man to do that would be midfield Dara O'Donovan. Would you expect it will be Dara, or do you expect someone in the back line for Limerick, Declan Hannon or Mike Casey? Like, someone really has to pick up Adrian Mullen, because if nobody picks him up, as you said there, he's going to score in every opportunity, you know. So
Limerick won't change their shape to do that. If he's around O'Donovan and William O'Donoghue are in the middle, they'll try to do their jobs on him, but they won't send someone out to mark him. I don't think anyway. If they don't do it to Tony Kelly, why would they change for anybody else? I know Adrian Mullen is having a phenomenal year as well, but if you don't do it for Tony Kelly, do you do it for anyone?
That's the thing, yeah. And
Hannon won't move anyway. Another interesting battle will be the two centre backs. Like, they're both going to play a very similar role for their teams. I think Richie Reid's positioning is going to be absolutely vital. Like, Kilkenny and Limerick don't play sweepers, but they play very deep centre backs, and the rest of the players are working back to cover off any of those areas. Richie Reid, as I mentioned against Wexford, he was on a lot of ball, but he didn't use it very well. Maybe it was pressure, maybe it was just instructions. But in terms of trying to cut off ball going into Flanagan and Gillan, I think his role is going to be key, because Limerick are able to bypass sweepers with the accuracy of their delivery into those guys. And then Aaron Gillan and Seamus Flanagan are able to win their own ball, throw it over their shoulder and over the bar phenomenally. So I'm interested to see, is Richie Reid going to try cut them off, or try to get a break? Maybe Hugh Lawler possibly picking up Gillan. Is he going to try break it to allow Richie in to pick it up?
It's interesting you mentioned Hugh Lawler and Gillan, because I was thinking about another Kilkenny back, Mikey Butler. Now, he was on Tony Kelly the last day. One of the best defensive displays ever in an All-Ireland semi-final. Outstanding display by him. Would you expect Butler to go on Aaron Gillan because of Aaron Gillan's scoring rate for Limerick at the moment, or would you stick by your point and say Hugh Lawler will go on him?
No, you're probably right, actually. It'll probably be, I don't know, Hugh Lawler maybe on Seamus Flanagan and Mikey Butler on Aaron Gillan. I'm like, they're both good in the air. It's hard to know. I don't know. It'll be those two on those two anyway, I'd imagine. And I underrated Hugh Lawler. I think it was back in 2019, and everyone was talking him up. And I don't know, and again, maybe it's my own bias, but I was thinking, why don't people talk up Liam Ryan like they talk up Hugh Lawler? Because what I see Liam Ryan doing is as good, if not better, as what Hugh Lawler does. But the more I watch Hugh, the more I'm thinking, no, he's a damn good player, and he was missing for Wexford's win in Nolan Park. And if he was around, it could have been a completely different story. I think he's a really important player for Kilkenny, and I'd expect a big game from him. I don't think. It's hard to know, like Gillan and Flanagan, it's not as if they've had any easy matchups. Dahi Burke in the last game, it's interesting.
It is very interesting indeed. And what's interesting as well, like other than Galan, who's been outstanding, I think he's the top scorer from play so far in the championship with a total of 318, outstanding from him. But other than Galan, the next top scorer from play after that is Garrod Haggerty with 111. That's in 5 games or 6 games in championship hurling. Like that isn't particularly hitting the lights out like Limerick do with the last few years. Tom Morrissey then with 12 points, Seamus Flanagan with 11. And news announced during the week, Cian Lynch hurled the year last year. There was rumours he'd come into the lineup, and now he's injured. He was pictured in a boot now yesterday, coming out of training. So, like with Cian Lynch out, Galan scoring a lot, and then the next score, Garrod Haggerty with 111. Like, would that be a worry for Limerick, or do you think these sorts of players will turn it on once the final comes around?
I mean, do you want to have Cian Lynch? Yes, absolutely. Hurler of the year. Absolutely phenomenal player. What's on Limerick's side is they've done without him all year so far already. They had Carl O'Neill step in centre forward for a good few games, and he was excellent. I'm not sure what his situation was. He wasn't playing the last day. You had Kyle Hayes moving into centre forward the last day. I mean, what I was thinking was going to be even more interesting is if Cian Lynch was fully fit, where does he pop up on the team? Because Kyle Hayes had such a man the match from centre forward the last day after struggling a bit on the inside line. I think a lot of people are thinking he should be back wing back. That's where he was absolutely phenomenal for the last 2 years. So Cian Lynch missing, huge loss, but for Limerick's state of mind, at least they've had a couple of games. They've won a Munster final. They're still unbeaten without him. They've won a Munster final without him. So it'll be a tough one. I'm sure Kylie was looking forward to having the tough decision of who to leave out and where to put Cian, but now that decision has been taken away.
And another interesting stat that I've been looking at as well, like the average scoring rate for Limerick in this championship campaign is 126 compared to Kilkenny's 224. So Kilkenny beat them there. And then defensively, Limerick have averaged a concession rate of 122, and Kilkenny have averaged 118. Like Kilkenny have the edge in both of those areas there. Do you think that's down to Kilkenny playing the likes of Laois, Dublin, Westmeath, or do you think Kilkenny have just been better this year in performance-wise so far?
Yeah, look, obviously, Laois, I don't feel like talking Westmeath down too much since they got the draw against Wexford, and I think Joe Fortune, a good Wexford man, doing a fantastic job there. But like they are on a lower level, and the scores that Kilkenny Galway put up against them were high, and that is going to change the scoring rate. Like I think goal wise as well, you probably know this better, but Kilkenny 16 goals I think in the championship so far to Limerick 7.
Yeah.
What I think the key to those stats is that Kilkenny probably will need goals, and Limerick don't score too many goals themselves. And if Kilkenny can, like they did against Clare, get a couple of early goals in the first half, I think Kilkenny need to go at Limerick in the first half. I mean, go at them. They're going to go at them for the whole game, but they want to try to build up a little bit of a lead in the first half if they're going to have a chance. I was very surprised with the Limerick Galway match. Actually, I thought once Limerick I think that they go 8 points to 1 up in the first half, I was just thinking that they're just going to run away with this. I was very impressed with the way Galway got back into the game, because usually Limerick just keep going, maybe 2 points to 1, outscoring 2 points to 1 every time, and the score just keeps building and building. But I think Kilkenny will need to do something similar to what they did in 2019 against them.
That's interesting, actually, because the last 2 All-Ireland finals I noticed about Limerick, like a lot of people were saying, oh, Waterford have a chance in 2020, Cork have a chance in 2021. And what Limerick did basically was blitz them out of the water in the first few minutes and the game's over. Like, that's why it's so crucial that Kilkenny, as you said, they need to go for goal, they need to go for broke, even early on against Limerick, because if they sit back and let Limerick play their brilliant game, the game could be over within a few minutes, despite the fact that Kilkenny have played decent enough hurling this season. Yeah,
I think it's something about Limerick that mind-boggling. They can they can kill a team in 10 minutes, and it doesn't matter which 10 minutes it is. It used to be quarters probably back when there was the water breaks, and a lot was put on that and what Connacht can say to them during those water breaks, and that they seem to come back out for maybe the second half of the first half, the second, we'll call it the second quarter of the game, and blow a team away. But you've seen it against Tipperary last year when Tipperary were all over them in the first half. And then Limerick produced one of the best halves of hurling, especially that first 10, 15 minutes. And the game was over with 15 minutes left. They've done it against Waterford before. They've done it against Cork before. They're just a 10, 15 minute period where they just take over the game. They did it again against Tipperary this year. Tipperary were, as we said, leading after 63 minutes and ended up losing, I think, by 8 or 9 points. They just have a phenomenal, like they're never turned off. And I think if the opposition team turns off even for a minute, they'll sniff blood and they'll just attack it, and they have the players to do it.
That's the thing, yeah. And you mentioned that 2019 game, Kilkenny beating Limerick, and they're starting off so well, and eventually they win that game. But like an interesting incident in that game, actually, I know we're pointing towards history, but Darragh O'Donovan hit a sideline. It probably should have been a 65. Well, it probably was a 65.
It was a 65 that wasn't given.
Exactly. You put bang the nail in the head right there, Gary. And like, if that decision went Kilkenny's way, which it probably should, or Limerick's way, should I say, which it should have, do you think Limerick would have won that game in extra time? Or do you think Kilkenny would have found another gear to try beat them? Because that poke there could be an interesting aspect of what happens on Sunday as well. Because Limerick have, since 1974, Limerick have only beaten Kilkenny in the championship once in 2018. That's it. So if that decision goes Limerick's way, we could be talking about Limerick providing a hammering in this game rather than Kilkenny providing a shock.
Yeah, that decision. Look, it turned out to be the wrong decision. If it goes to extra time, you really don't know. Extra time is extra time. Limerick were definitely in the ascendancy in that game. Kilkenny got the great start, and Limerick started chipping away at the lead, and they got it back so far, but they couldn't get over the line. And once it goes to a replay or extra time, the element of surprise is gone, and they know what's ahead. But it doesn't always happen that way. Looking at the Limerick team, maybe that was the best thing for them. I think some of the players, I think Dowling even touched on it, that result, has driven them to what they are now. Like hurling's a game of moments, and you can't rely on a decision being given the right way, because it's not always the case. Like I'll go back to our own sub story of Wexford against Clare and Lee Chin being pulled down for the penalty. I mean, it should have been a penalty, but it wasn't given. There's nothing we can do about it. Hopefully it'll make us stronger for next year. I don't know why it would, but let's hope. If you want to stay away from a game being decided of decisions, be that far ahead so that the decision doesn't matter. There's a lot of talk that Limerick they need to beat Kilkenny in one of their All-Ireland wins, and no better place to do it in the final, partly for revenge for that happening, and partly just because they haven't bet Kilkenny on the way to All-Ireland glory yet. And this authenticates it, you could say. And a 3 in a row beating Kilkenny, that just puts them right up there as one of the greatest teams, if not the greatest team, like challenging with those great Kilkenny teams. So that's important from their point of view. And from Kilkenny's point of view, and I don't doubt it for a second, but that's in their heads. That's in Brian Cody's head. He does not want to let that happen. He doesn't want to let another team get a 3 in a row. He doesn't want to let John Kiley get the 4 and 5 years. He doesn't want them to get, their revenge for that sideline incident. And why I've no doubt that he will reference this, because I read Owen Larkin's book, and it's what Brian Cody does. Like, he will use anything to get motivation out of those players, and it works.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose, like, like we see it with I know this is football now with Dublin and Kerry on Sunday, like two big rivalry, two big counties there, the top two counties, arguably the top two counties in hurling are now playing Sunday. Would you like Dublin Kerry? There was a lot of mind games I see, like Evan Comerford, for example, going down the floor. Would you expect any mind games in this game? Like you said, Cody isn't the type of coach nowadays to bring in late changes. Like he did it against Watford, I think 2017 or 2016. I'm not entirely sure. He did it with Tipperary as well a few years back after that. Like, would you expect Cody to bring in a late change, or would you expect the 50 to be named, like say on Friday, to be the 50 to be named on Sunday?
I kind of touched off it already. I don't think there's enough time now between the games to make too many changes to your teams. One or two changes max, maybe knock related, or maybe like you'd have to be going very bad form in training. Like again, training, you've got 2 weeks, a recovery week and a sharpening up week. But again, like from listening to ex-Kilkenny players like the likes of David Herity, Cody can judge things on your body language. In training, he can judge things on your previous game. He'll judge everything, and that could lead to a change or two. But there's not a lot of time for testing out those changes in a say 15-on-15 game.
Definitely. And would you see any Limerick changes in this game? Like Graham Mulcahy started the last game against Galway. You expect Colin O'Neill to surely come in for him because he only scored 1 point in the championship so far. I found that particularly strange, him starting against Galway. So would you expect any late changes for Limerick, or do you think it'll be the same 15 again? Yeah, like Kilkenny.
Yeah, I mean, Graham Mulcahy is a strange one. Like he was one of the hurlers of the years back a few years ago. His performance definitely went down last year, and this year as well. He works incredibly hard, and that's why he's in the team, because he's not scoring like he used to score. But I think he's in there nearly out of more of a loyalty from John Kiley because of his work ethic, and he's been there with them the whole time. But certainly Colin O'Neill's hand is up there to get a start. David Reedy's hand is up there to get a start. Like there's a number of those on the Limerick team. They're all looking for the start. I just have a sneaky feeling Graham Mulcahy, he'll get the start. He won't last the 70. There'll be someone raring to go to come in off the line, and like we've seen, Limerick subs can come in and bag a number of points as well.
Definitely, and the subs bench is another interesting aspect because the story that last day was Peter Casey and Cian Lynch. Well, Cian Lynch is not fit, as we already established in this preview, but David Reedy came on and got 3 points. Like Oisin O'Reilly's also on the bench as well, like Colin O'Neill as well. There are players on the bench that will prove decisive in this game. And you look at Kilkenny's bench is not as strong as Limerick. So would you think Limerick have the edge on the bench, or do you think Brian Cody could be up to his old tricks and bring on some super sub that we don't know about particularly, and he hits 2 goals in the space of 2 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's down to who starts. If Walter Walsh is on the bench and he comes in, he will make a huge impact to any team when he comes on. I just love to see Richie Hogan coming in and doing something special. He was always one of my favorite players. He's the same age as me. Played against them underage, Wexford against Kilkenny, growing up. Actually, I marked him for the schools, Bunclody FCJ against St. Kieran's. I was centre back. He was centre forward. He got 3 points off me. The only bad thing about it was football. So he's actually not a bad footballer either. But I'm very fond of him. I'd love to see. He was named on the bench the last day. I was really hoping that he'd come on. I'm hoping that's Brian Cody's surprise package for the final. No, he's probably not going to be in line to start, but to come on and do something special that he has it in him. Like he also, his last appearance in an All-Ireland final was didn't end the way he'd like it either with the red card. He still feels aggrieved about that, so I'm sure that he does have something to prove there as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And the other guy that potentially could cause Limerick a few problems, looking at him now, Bossy Keone scored 4 goals in the campaign. Like Limerick have conceded 4 goals, again 2 against Waterford, 1 against Cork, and that Brian Kilcannon goal the last day. Like, do you think Kilkenny could actually use Bossy Keone as a bit of a weapon? Like, he doesn't score particularly much points. He's the kind of player that scores more goals than points. Like, do you think Kilkenny could use him to their advantage, or do you think a fellow like Mike Casey at full back for Limerick could be the man to wipe him out?
It's interesting. Mossy, he's kind of he's an old-fashioned kind of hurler, I think, but he's very effective. As you've just said, his goals, like, and I think it was in the league semi-final, he got 2 goals against Cork, but he played terrible, and he was taken off, and then he didn't start the first game of the championship, I think, and then he was kind of out of favour, but he came back in, and he just started scoring goals, and he's definitely a weapon. But like, if you're talking about one of the strongest lines in hurling, it's that Limerick full back line.
It definitely is, yeah. And even their halfbacks as well. Dermot Burns has gotten the score sheet quite a lot. Like, Kyle Hayes used to be a halfback, but the thing is, like, Dan Morrissey was full back last year. It's Mike Casey this year. Dan Morrissey's moved out to wing back. So the strength and depth of this Limerick team is absolutely outstanding. And this is another question, like, in history, really. If Limerick win on Sunday, this will be 3 in a row now. Would you have to consider this Limerick team as the greatest of all time? I know Kilkenny won the 4 in a row between 2006 and 2009, but if Kilkenny did subsequently, or Limerick, should I say, subsequently win a 4 in a row, would this team be considered one of the greatest of all time in hurling history?
Yeah, if they go on and win a 4 in a row, a 5 in a row, they obviously will be. What they've done since 2018 is already putting them up there in the conversation, absolutely. And the age profile of this team, it's an average age of 26 or 27. Like, it doesn't look like they're going away anytime soon. So it's going to take a lot of other counties responding to it. Yeah, I wouldn't consider them there yet, and maybe it's just looking back on that Kilkenny team with rose-tinted glasses, but by God, did they give Wexford hammerings, and everyone, they were so far ahead of everyone else. I don't think Limerick are as far ahead of everyone else at the moment as Kilkenny were back then. I don't know whether that's because everyone else is at such a good level as well right now, and they weren't back in the noughties and early 2000s. But yeah, they'll be in the conversation, and again, that's something that Brian Cody and Kilkenny will be using as a source of motivation to put that out of their minds, out of the public's minds. And there's only one greatest.
Yeah, and that will give Brian Cody a lot of motivation to try and beat this Limerick team, to try and stop their gallop. And do you think Kilkenny will be the team to try and stop Limerick? Like, Limerick, throughout the years 2019 to now, Kilkenny have been the only team that they haven't beaten. Will this be the moment that Limerick finally do it for the first time since 2018, or can Kilkenny stop their gallop, and could Brian Cody be the master of destruction once again?
I'm gonna go to something that David Herty said on. He said it on Off the Ball, talking to Ger Gilroy and Owen Sheen last week. I think he was on again today, but he's speaking to them last week, and he said that everything about Limerick is better, but he can't see Kilkenny losing. And that makes no sense, but I kind of feel the same way. What do you think yourself?
Look, I said Limerick throughout the year, and I'm actually going to stick with Limerick. Like, on the GA Show podcast, though, the last episode I was on, there was David Byrne, Kerry/Limerick journalist, said Limerick. I said Limerick, and then Joe McCarthy from Cork said Kilkenny. He just can't see Cody be beaten. It's a bit like David Herty. You know, Cody's just such a great coach, but Limerick are such a great team. Like, it's a hard one to call, but I'd go Limerick anyway. I don't know what you think yourself, but I've backed Limerick throughout the year. I just think they're going to win this game, but it'd be interesting to see. Do you think Kilkenny could do it? Like, Cody?
I do. I just, again, like, it doesn't make sense because Limerick haven't given any reason to be doubted so far. Everything about every aspect of this game, as I said at the very start, is interesting. From the goalkeepers, like, they are the 2 best goalkeepers in the game at the moment. We wouldn't be even talking about Limerick like we are if it wasn't for the save that Nicky Quaid made against Seamus Harnedy in 2018 semi-final. Like, that started this journey And I think John Kiley, the way he was talking during the week, that if they didn't win that, he could have stepped away from the job at that stage. Now I don't think he actually would have, but that was the start of this Limerick team's journey, and it started with their goalkeeper, their number one. Look on the other side, Owen Murphy, and as I said it earlier, he's had one bad game that I can ever remember for Kilkenny. His shot stop, the save he made against Conor McDonald against Wexford was just out of this world. But not only his save, the way he directs the defence, the way his puck outs, just everything. There was actually an interesting article from Sean Flynn about puck outs and short puck outs, long puck outs. He analysed them all. It was in the 42, and he feels that Limerick are going to try give Kilkenny, force them into short puck outs in this game. And it's something that I'm interested in looking out for myself. In 2000 and that game in 2019, they only hit 5 short puck outs, and they got a lot of joy from the long ones. But I think that if Limerick start pulling back that little bit further, give them the short puck out, it'll probably go out to Tommy Walsh. Probably not to Mikey Butler, because he'd be all over either Seamus Flanagan or Aaron Gillan. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what can he do from there and how they work it out. Do they give it out short and go along from there, or do they work it through the lines?
It'd be very, very interesting to see. But I have to push you on a prediction though, Gary. Do you think Kilkenny will do it?
Yes, I do.
There you go. We're both going different predictions for this All-Ireland final. And one more thing as well, who do you think will be hurler of the year? I know there's one more game to play on Sunday. You'd be predicting Kilkenny to win the All-Ireland, so I'd be thinking you'd be predicting someone like Mikey Butler, TJ Reid, or Adrian Mullen, maybe someone different. Who do you think would be hurler of the year?
At the moment, it's between Aaron Gillan and Adrian Mullen, I think. TJ had a slow start to the championship, but he was taken off in that Galway game, I think. Adrian Mullen, Aaron Gillan is probably ahead at the moment, I think. So if Kilkenny win and Adrian Mullen has a good game, he's up there. If Mikey Butler is marking Aaron Gillan, keeps him quiet. Not very often you get cornerbacks with hurler of the year. He'd be up there. And look, you could pick any of the. Diarmaid Burns has been up there for the whole year, and then the Limerick full back line, like Barry Nash. He's scoring. I know he used to be a forward, but the way he just comes up the field and nonchalantly just puts it over the bar and then back to his job. Like Sean Finn, every game he doesn't have a bad game.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're pushing me. I know I'm thinking Kilkenny are going to win, but I just think Aaron Gillan so far this year, with the way he can just score from anywhere, win his own ball, out on the sideline, over the bar, and important scores as well. He's the favourite at the moment. Who do you think yourself?
I was going to take Aaron Gillan because Limerick won the All-Ireland, but it's actually interesting you pick Aaron Gillan despite you predicting Kilkenny will win the All-Ireland.
Yeah, I know, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't know, like I think Asta Gleeson was the only player the last few years not to win the All-Ireland and then win Player of the Year. I think so. I might be wrong in saying that now, but I think there was a stat recently though that Asta Gleeson was the only player not to win the All-Ireland in recent years and win Player of the Year the same year. Like it could happen, but usually with the GA it doesn't usually happen. But like with the year Aaron Gillan's had, regardless, Aaron Gillan should be up there. Like he scored 318 from play. That's monstrous.
Absolutely monstrous. And so many of those were important scores as well. It wasn't in a runaway victory or anything. I think even if Kilkenny win, as long as Aaron Gillan does well, he'll be right up there. If Kilkenny win, Adrian Mullen has a really good game. He'll also, it'll be between those two, I think.
There you go. Yeah, we've made our predictions for our Player of the Year, and the winners on Sunday should be a very interesting game in the All-Ireland Hurling final. Definitely looking forward to both of us. Gary, thank you for coming on to the podcast. Obviously, check out the Wexford Hurling Podcast. I'll link this in the bio of this episode. Obviously, Ben Burley, the other host of the podcast, was on it. On my podcast earlier on the year, previewing a weekend of Alliance League action. So if you didn't check that out as well. Thank you, Gary, for coming on to the podcast. And I wish you the best of luck with the Hurling Podcast, and hopefully you'll enjoy the game Sunday despite Wexford not being there.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Thanks a million, Matt, and keep up the good stuff.